Good morning, Canada. Welcome to the weekend edition of Your Morning. I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake.
I'm Lindsey Deluce.
And I'm Kelsey McEwen. Thanks for starting your day off with us.
So we have a great show lined up for you today. Coming up in just a couple minutes, how to do a career check-in for this year, 2026, so you can reflect and reset your goals for your professional life.
Love that. We're also looking at the new system coming to Air Canada's loyalty program, which changes the way you earn Aeroplan points.
Wow, I will be watching. First up, how a Canadian researcher's 3D printed lung tissue could transform how respiratory issues are treated.
So in a fascinating world first, researchers in Montreal have successfully used a 3D printer to form lung tissue. The bioengineers at McGill University say their research could reshape how health problems affecting the lungs are treated. For more on this discovery, we're joined by Darcy Wagner, Canadian Excellence Research Chair in Lung Regenerative Medicine at McGill University and the person who led the research. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Teddy.
So experts say lungs are among the most difficult organs to transplant. According to the Mayo Clinic, just 20% of donor lungs in the U.S. are acceptable for transplant. So what are the factors that make lung transplants so challenging? Like, what informs that kind of medically, that difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, the lungs are a really complex organ in comparison to the organs that are transplanted. So we have airways, we have blood vessels, we have nervous system, we have other systems that all need to be working together for the transplanted organ to work. The surgery is also incredibly complex, more complex than other solid organs. There's also other factors that we just don't completely understand right now. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this area for patients with respiratory diseases.
Yeah, it seems so complex. And your research, as I said off the top, it's the first time 3D bioprinting has been done for lung-specific tissue. Can you walk us through how this all works?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of innovations over the last maybe 10, 15 years in the 3D printing space. And so when I first started to talk about this, most people didn't even know what 3D printing is, but now most people are familiar with that. The big challenge when we try to print tissue is that we have to make special materials in order to be able to be compatible with cells that we print. And so that was one of the big innovations that we really had to go through, is to make something that's specific for lungs. So we built off a lot of my own research, but also work of others globally to be able to make these sort of lung-specific materials that really helped this breakthrough.
Yeah, the research that you and your team and the work you've done is just incredible. Now, according to the Canadian Institute for Health Information, or CIHI, 416 Canadians received a lung transplant last year. 231 people were waitlisted, while 31 died waiting for a lung transplant. So given this new research that you and your team have completed, who could benefit most from 3D printed lung tissue?
I mean, so I think, the numbers that you're putting up right now, I mean, I haven't seen those right now, but those sort of indicate, worst case scenarios. There's a lot of more patients actually that are in need of transformative therapies. What we're really hoping for is the technologies that we're working on is that we're actually going to be able to get therapies to patients sooner. So most people don't get on these wait-in lists until they're really at end-stage lung disease. So we're hoping to actually broaden those numbers much more. And these are for patients with diseases such as COPD, emphysema is a subtype of this, fibrosis. These are the types of patients that we're really trying to develop new therapies for.
Yeah, so many folks could benefit. Now, so far, you've successfully transplanted 3D printed lung tissue into mice. I imagine a lot needs to happen before human trials can begin, but can you take us through that? Like, what needs to go on before you can start human trials?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So obviously, printing things on the scale of mouse tissue is much simpler than printing things that are going to need to go into humans. So we're going to need to scale up these processes, and to do this, we're actually building custom new printers to be able to do that. The other major component of this is actually bringing these technologies not just from a lab space, but bringing them into specialized and dedicated facilities, which we're building here at McGill, in order to actually be able to transplant those into patients. These rooms have to have extra monitoring. There's a lot more documentation that needs to go around this. There's also some different materials that we actually need to use in order to go into patients. So those are the major things that we're working on right now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to you and your team for the incredible work that you're doing.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Coming up, how to do a career check-in to get your professional goals on track in 2026.
The new year has all of us reflecting on what's to come next, and this includes our jobs and our careers. Maybe your goal for 2026 is to land that dream promotion, or maybe you're switching careers entirely. Certified career strategist Chichi Abo says figuring all of this out starts with a career check-in. So she's checking in with me now. Great to have you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So how do you know when it's time or what to do if you're doing a career check-in? How do you know the timing?
The one thing I tell people to look at, there's a spectrum. When someone asks you, like, do you like your job? How's it going? And then you say, I like it. Or you say, it's just okay. Or you say, you don't like it at all. If you're in that just okay indifference phase, or you don't like it at all, that's a sign to do that check-in and figure out why. Either you can pivot towards liking it and figure out how to fix it, or if you're in that just okay phase, eventually you'll get to that I don't like it phase. And that's when things feel urgent. And that's when you start to feel disengaged and perhaps make career decisions that aren't right for you.
Yeah, so before you get to that point, almost be a little proactive.
Yes.
And think about it. So how do we start?
Yes.
Where do we start?
Yeah, so the best place to start, and if you're thinking about New Year's January resolutions, use January as a time to check in and reflect. Don't start your goals right away. So use the first few weeks of January to block some time off to think about what you want to do, what you've done the prior year, what worked well, what didn't, and what is exciting for you now. What do you want to learn? So start that process through clear reflection. And then eventually you could use that to build some goals.
I mean, that's such a great thing to do in so many aspects of your life, but especially your career. You don't have to wait for someone else to ask you. You can ask yourself those questions. And then once you've reflected, Chichi, how do you use this information to take steps forward to create goals?
Yeah, so there's this keep, drop, grow framework, right, that I like to tell people to use. So keep is what worked out really well in terms of your strengths and your skills and projects that was exciting for you the prior year, right? Do you want to continue to do that in 2026? Drop. What got me off track? What didn't feel right? What did I fail in? Or what just didn't make me feel excited? Then you're going to think about, okay, maybe I should kind of take those things outside the picture. And then grow. So what do you want to be curious in? What is driving your interest, right? What do you want to learn more of? After you've reflected and written those down, you can make a decision to narrow it down and decide, like this is the direction I want to take.
I love this. So what actions can you take to achieve some of those goals, to be able to make progress on that?
Yeah. So one thing people do when it comes to resolutions is big lofty goals or a lot of goals where they're just changing their life completely upside down. So I recommend start small, pick one direction, one skill to focus on, right? Like that's gonna be key. And then you're also gonna think about when you're moving forward, is it courses that I want to take? What are the different programs that exist? And also look at, do I want to start a side passion or personal project using the skills that I'm interested in, that I want to develop? Or do I want to ultimately figure out it's a new career direction, right? So it's about starting those small actions to get you there, but just stay away from building out multiple goals that just aren't sustainable. Small action will take you a long way. It's about progress, not perfection.
Oh, I love that. Progress, not perfection. Such a good reminder. Listen, there are people watching right now who may be considering switching careers or industries in 2026. What piece of advice do you have for them?
Yes, my piece of advice is when you're reflecting, do it first in a space where you feel comfortable, right? So I said earlier around reflection and how to do it and thinking about what you want. So whether you're comfortable typing notes on your laptop or journaling or doing a career vision board, either on Bristol board or digital, do what feels comfortable for you, because that's going to feel energizing. And then once you do that in reflection, take stock of your skills that you have, right? Do a skills inventory, the strengths that work well for you, and then the strengths that you are curious about. And then from there, figure out what's transferable, right? If it's transferable to another industry, another career direction, you're not starting from bottom. You're starting from a place where you'll feel like all your years in another field have gone to waste. And lastly, find your community, right? Coffee chats, informational interviews, other people that in roles and careers that inspire you or that interest you, hear about their journey, hear about how they made the switch. And that's gonna be the best place to start.
I love that. I feel inspired by this conversation. Chichi, this is such great information for all of our viewers. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Major changes are coming to Air Canada's Aeroplan program.
Starting tomorrow, the way members earn points will change. It's part of a new system the airline is launching in the new year. And for more on what this means for your next flight, I'm joined by Barry Choi, money and travel expert. Barry, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Great to be here, and Happy New Year to you. Almost. We're almost there. Tell us what the biggest changes are that Aeroplan members need to know.
So, two big things. The biggest one and the most easiest to understand is they're going to a revenue-based system. So before you would earn points based on the miles you've flown, now it's based on how much you spend. And for those who are looking to earn status, 50K, 75K, super elite, they've switched to status qualifying credits. It makes things a little bit easier, technically speaking, instead of the old system, which required a combination of two different things. So in theory, it's a little bit streamlined now.
Because it was based before on miles and credits as well,
was
right?
dollars spent plus segments or miles flown. So there are two things you had to qualify for. So those super flyers, it's going to be technically a little bit easier, but realistically speaking, you're going to have to spend more.
And this is the thing, super flyers is the question, because there's a lot of people that are just, making sure that they put away those points for that dream vacation, and they might not be the super flyer. So this is important for those people to know for sure.
It's good on both ends. So for the casual flyer, realistically speaking, if you don't have status, it's not going to make a difference, right?
Okay.
Because, you're going to earn fewer points when you're flying, but you earn more points on credit cards regardless. As far as redemptions are concerned, nothing changes, right? Aeroplan is still dynamic, so you can still save your points. You can use your points, fly anywhere Air Canada flies and its partners. But for those super flyers who have status, who are booking those business fares, those flex fares, they have an opportunity to earn much more points. And that's clearly the way this program is designed.
So those status flyers are who benefits the most?
Always, whoever spends the most will always be rewarded the most. That's the way most loyalty programs work.
So how do you think that this will change the way that the average traveler, or maybe the super points earner, will fly?
So for the average traveler, just someone who doesn't travel much, probably won't make much of a difference. I feel like the people who are in the 35, 50K, they're probably going to get tempted by those promos that Aeroplan will introduce. Some ways to earn more credits, to put you in the higher spending category. And those people who spend a lot, maybe they're like, hey, if I booked a higher fare, I'm going to get so many more points, or I'm going to get higher status. Maybe that's what. So again, you can see it's designed to get people to spend more.
Okay, so that whole incentive there will be for people to book perhaps that premium or business seat versus the economy flight, even more so than before.
Definitely so. So if you've got status and you're booking premium, you get the multiplier, so you can earn you significantly more points. So just as general rule, 25, 35K, they're probably going to earn less. 50K stays the same. 75K and above, you're going to earn more. But people flying short haul, say that Toronto, Montreal, New York route, they can earn status much quicker, because now it's based on revenue, whereas before it was miles, so you're not flying very far, but now you're spending more. So for business travelers, it can be lucrative, for sure.
It can be really lucrative. But let's face it, that's not all of us. Some of us are, as again, you're saving for that vacation, you're wanting to plan ahead and put away those points for vacation. I think a lot of Canadians are going to want to know how they can maximize their rewards under this new loyalty program. So what would you suggest?
So maximizing rewards is really two ways. And the nice thing about these changes, it really doesn't affect things, right? So essentially, as long as you're using a credit card and using those daily partners, say Starbucks, LCBO here in Ontario, Uber, you can earn points on a regular basis, Aeroplan eStore, and then redeeming your points. It's really just about finding that flight that makes sense for you. So you don't want to necessarily maximize value, which is good, but if there's a flight to Japan that your family has always been looking for and it helps you save money, listen, you can't go wrong, because what other program is going to give you that kind of opportunity?
Yeah, that makes sense. But what do you think at this point that travelers should do differently as these changes take effect tomorrow? Because we're here. We heard about it happening, and now it's here.
I think people who are looking for status or who have status should pay a little bit more attention. The nice thing is they've got calculators online where you can see exactly how many credits you're going to get. Maybe pay a little bit more attention to those emails you're getting as far as promos are concerned. So again, this applies to people who are spending the most. But the casual traveler, business as usual. I wouldn't worry too much about it at all.
Okay, that's good to know. That's peace of mind for a lot of people. Thank you so much for joining us, Barry Choi, travel and money expert. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Ahead on your morning, why experts are worried that Canada is falling behind in the fight against crypto fraud.
Canada was the first country in the world to pass laws addressing cryptocurrency, but today experts warn it may be falling behind in the fight against crypto fraud. A new investigation found unregistered services are operating across the country that allow people to convert cryptocurrency into large amounts of cash, often without ID checks or proper records. Experts say these services create an easy path for money laundering and other criminal activity. Adam Atlas is a lawyer who specializes in crypto, and he joins me now. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michelle.
For people who aren't familiar with this, how exactly do these crypto to cash services work?
Well, there's a variety of ways in which people could convert crypto to cash or cash to crypto. The best way to do it is with a licensed and duly regulated crypto exchange, like CoinSquare or Coinbase, done electronically. But there are some services that offer a conversion between crypto and cash through ATMs. And some of them operate entirely within the law, and some of them don't. I don't have the stats on how rampant the illegal operation of those machines are, but those are the two main ways of converting crypto in Canada today.
Okay, so other than the fact that some of these are not above board in general, why is it such a big deal that these transactions can happen without showing ID or leaving a record?
Well, Canadian law requires that anyone engaged in that particular kind of business must collect identification and other pieces of know your customer information for transactions. The reason for this is we want to be sure that the financial system, whether it be fiat or crypto, is not abused by criminals, money launderers, or financiers of terrorism. So that's the reason why we would want proper identification to happen on those transactions.
So once money is moved to foreign crypto exchanges, is it essentially, it's just gone for good at that point?
Yeah. One of the features of fraud in cryptocurrency scenarios is exactly as you point out, it's very hard to retrieve the assets once they leave your hands. And so fraud is as old as money and finance, but crypto fraud makes money disappear perhaps more quickly than other means. But it's important not to tarnish all of crypto with a bad perspective just because some people abuse it. There are plenty of very good and innovative uses for cryptocurrency.
I think the thing is that for many Canadians, there might still be a lot of mystery around the subject of crypto, what it is, how it works, and that also probably makes us a little bit more vulnerable if we don't understand it as well. But why specifically do experts say that Canada is a weak link in the global fight against crypto fraud?
Well, I think Canada has not had a strong history of strong enforcement of financial crimes laws. We don't know, for example, we don't hear in Canada, for example, of foreigners being extradited to Canada to face the Canadian justice system and time in jail because they defrauded Canadians. In contrast, in the United States, that is a very real and regular occurrence. And I think bad actors around the world fear the United States and doing wrong to U.S. persons because of strong enforcement of U.S. financial crimes laws. So Canada could up its game in that way to improve the outcome for Canadians.
So how can these crypto to cash services result in Canadians being scammed beyond the fact that we don't have those laws that would protect us?
Well, I think every Canadian has a friend or relative or themselves who've been scammed in one way or another, not necessarily with crypto. But some of them are get-rich-quick schemes. Some of them are grandmother schemes where someone impersonates a grandson and needs a certain amount of crypto sent to a particular address or else. I think to address this, there's a mixture of things that could help. One is more provincial licensing. Only one province in Canada that licenses this activity right now, which is Quebec. British Columbia is coming online soon, but for now it's just Quebec versus the United States, where every single state except Montana has a licensing regime for crypto businesses. Another aspect is education. I got flyers from my MP on free rides on Via Rail. I think that flyer would have been much better had it been an educational flyer on how to avoid fraud, whether it be in crypto or by other means. And then finally, I think banks have a role to play here. not just in the crypto frauds, but in elder abuse in general. When grandma goes to the bank and wires her life savings overseas to some unknown place, which is a regular occurrence in Canada, I think the government should change the paradigm so that banks earn a degree of responsibility for those transactions.
So better guardrails, better legislation, and definitely better education as well. Adam Atlas,
Absolutely.
crypto lawyer, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Take care.
Next week on Your Morning, we're in the kitchen with Jason Scrobar's cozy winter meal ideas.
Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to the weekend edition of Your Morning. I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake.
I'm Lindsey Deluce.
I'm Kelsey McEwen. Coming up, we have a lot of great stuff, including a roundup of the best books to add to your reading list this year.
And with Canada's long-awaited grocery code of conduct now officially in place, we're going to look at what that could mean for your bill.
And earlier in the show, we were talking about setting career goals for 2026. And now we're looking at why AI could eventually be preventing you from getting the job you want. Here's that conversation.
So close to half of Canadian job seekers say they use AI tools like ChatGPT to support them during the application process. For example, by plugging in some basic info, you can make a resume in literally seconds with the help of AI. And while that might sound appealing, our next guest says it could be preventing you from landing that new gig. Career expert Angela Champ joins us now from Windsor. Hey, Angela.
Good morning.
It's great to talk to you. So, obviously there's a lot of time-saving potential with using AI and ChatGPT during the application process for a job. But what are some of the issues with using AI to assist you?
Yes, so many people are using ChatGPT that they may be surprised to find out that it could be preventing them from landing a job. And part of it is exactly what you said in the intro. It's so easy to generate a resume in just seconds that where a company might get 50 or 100 resumes in the past when they were doing it the old-fashioned way, now because it's so easy to generate one and send an application in, companies are getting thousands of resumes. And what's happening is that qualified resumes are getting buried because hardly any recruiters are looking at thousands of resumes. And that's the reason why is because people are faking it till they make it. They're using ChatGPT to create a really good sounding resume, but they may not have the qualifications. And so they're being discounted. And then that sets out a bad precedent. And lastly, an AI generated resume might be too generic and there's nothing about it that might help you stand out so that you can land that interview so you can get that job.
Yeah, it's wild. So it results in a flood of applications because more job seekers are applying because it's easier to do up an application and a resume. That can be time consuming, obviously, if you're doing it on your own. So there's a flood of those. It makes all the resumes sound pretty generic. So given this new landscape, can recruiters and places that you're applying to, can they tell if you're using AI to help you generate an application or a resume?
Definitely. Many recruiters can tell, and they're doing this. First of all, some of them are running the resumes or applications through an AI checker, such as the Zero GPT, and it's telling them how much of the resume is AI generated. Set up some red flags for the recruiter. Secondly, it could sound like a generic listing of job duties. What people do is they take their resume, they take the job posting, which, by the way, may also be AI generated, and they're just regurgitating what it says in the job posting. So again, nothing that makes them stand out. The resume might just copy the listing word for word, and there's a certain voice. Now, some people are using ChatGPT and they're training it to speak in their voice, but many people are not. And so some applications that they're using, it has a ChatGPT voice, and that is flagging the recruiter that maybe this one is not an authentic application.
I hadn't heard that before. So recruiters can send your application or your resume through an AI checker and get a fairly accurate reading as to what percentage of it you used or was generated by AI? That's wild.
You run it through the checker and it will say what percentage of it is AI generated. It could be like 1% because if you're using it for proofreading, but sometimes it's 100% AI generated.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, so somebody is applying for a job. They're not going to use any AI or ChatGPT in part because of this information that you're giving now. How do you stand out then, especially given that there are now maybe thousands of applications to a job that used to get hundreds?
Yes, definitely. So what you don't want to do is send in a generic application. Even if you're using ChatGPT or AI to create an outline, make sure that every bullet point on your resume answers the question, so what? In other words, you are responsible for sales. So what? So you exceeded last year's target, or you were the #1 salesperson for the quarter. Make sure that you're using metrics. If you're in HR, did you reduce turnover? By how much? If you were in sales, did you increase sales? By how much? If you are in customer service, what were your customer satisfaction scores? You use metrics like percentages and dollar figures to personalize it. Another thing you may want to do is look up who is the hiring manager or the recruiter and send your application to them directly rather than sending it generically through the website. And the last thing that you can do is through your network, go onto LinkedIn, see who knows somebody from that organization, and ask them to refer you. Often referrals get brought to the top of the pile. And so if you're competing with thousands of people, at least you'll have a better chance than the rest of the people will.
And just very quickly, we only have about 15 seconds left, but if you're not using AI or ChatGPT, how can you save time going through what can be a very time-consuming application process?
Create a master resume that lists every job that you've ever had with all of these metrics that we talked about. But then for each job, take that master's resume and narrow it down, make it specific to that organization or that job. It might take about 20 minutes, but you're more likely to get a quality product versus just quantity, just sending it in and competing with thousands of others.
All right, Angela Champ, thank you so much for joining us. Some great information there. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
After more than a decade, the search for Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 is set to resume today. The Boeing 777 vanished in March 2014 with 239 people on board, leaving families and investigators without answers. Malaysian officials say a deep-sea company will restart operations in the southern Indian Ocean using advanced technology to target the most likely search areas. John Graydeck, faculty lecturer and program coordinator for the Aviation Management program at McGill University, joins us now. John, welcome.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. So tell us, why is the research resuming now?
Aviation does not like mystery, and this is probably one of those lingering mysteries that needs to be resolved. We've been trying to resolve this for 12 years, and we've had multiple attempts, and this is just the latest attempt by Oceanic, the third attempt by Oceanic to, in fact, look at the wreckage and the remains of passengers aboard that.
As you mentioned, it's been a long time that we've been dealing with this mystery. It's been more than 11 years since MH370 disappeared. So can you remind us, take us back, what happened that day in 2014?
The aircraft was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. It left Kuala Lumpur around midnight. It was an overnight flight to Beijing, about 7 hours. Into the flight, it disappeared. And there was a trace of a latent ping from the aircraft in terms of what it was doing for the last 4 or 5 hours. So people have been assuming directions, have been looking at radar tracks, trying to find out exactly where this airplane went down. There is no question in anybody's mind that the aircraft has broken up. They found pieces of wreckage over the last 7 or 8 years through the Indian Ocean and through the South China Sea. So there is no doubt that, there's the conspiracy theories that this airplane is sitting in a hangar someplace and people have been kidnapped or whatever. There's no proof that the aircraft did in fact disintegrate and break up on impact into the ocean. So the question right now is why? And I think that's the question that the investigators are going to black box.
Well, other than the question of why this happened, you mentioned there have been a few pieces that have been found. Why has been finding the aircraft been so challenging for investigators over the years, in your opinion?
Well, this is deep water. This is, it's waters at 5,000 to 6,000 feet deep craft. seems to have broken up because of the components that we've seen, come up in recovery. So the aircraft is not in one piece. The aircraft is in multiple pieces. So, what we're having to do is scour for small pieces of metal, 5,000, 6,000 feet down in the ocean where you already had 10 years worth of sediment on it. So the components and the aircraft is probably submerged under sediment. And so it's not a visual. You're going to have to look at ground penetrating radar and lasers to look for the components of that aircraft. So it's a tedious job. And the question is, where do you look? Initially it was a 150,000 square kilometer circle that they thought this aircraft was in, which is, decades worth of search. Now they're down to 15,000 kilometers. They hope they've got the right 15,000 kilometers, and that's what they're doing for the next days.
There have been other searches. I think the most recent one was in November. What lessons have investigators learned from these previous searches that could help the operation succeed this time?
They're using high tech. The technology that was used in the previous searches has evolved. I wouldn't say substantially, has evolved incrementally. They're now using robotics to go down into the depth. The robots basically have about 100 hours worth of battery. They're independent robots. They're vehicles, underwater vehicles that have artificial intelligence built into them, that have the ability to, in fact, look for traces of metal and have the ability to in fact, look at ground penetrating radar as well as laser technology to look beneath the sediment. So they can go down to the bedrock. Well, they have the technology improved significantly over the last few years that now they feel that it's reached a point where the chances of finding metal are a lot.
I certainly hope that more answers are found this time. John Greydack, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Have a great day. Take care.
You too.
Coming up, Canada's new grocery code of conduct, what it is and what it means for your wallet.
So starting New Year's Day, Canada's grocery industry will abide by a new set of rules. The long-awaited Grocery Code of Conduct will take effect to create more transparency and fairness between suppliers and retailers. This aims to contribute to a competitive grocery industry by creating clear rules and helping to solve commercial disputes. But what could this mean for the consumer? For a closer look at what this might mean for you and others, I'm joined by Doug Stevens, retail expert. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Teddy?
I'm great, thanks. And it's really great to talk to you about this. I know this code of conduct has been in the works and there's been pressure for it for many years. So how will this change the way our grocery retailers and suppliers do business? Because this is about the relationship between them, not directly the consumer, right?
Yeah, exactly. And before we sort of understand the what, we kind of have to understand the why. And the why is we, as a country, in the grocery category are basically served by about 5 retailers, and they control about 80% of all groceries that are sold in the country. That includes Loblaws, Metro, Sobeys, Walmart, and Costco. And you could kind of even rule out Costco a little bit because they're not available in every market. So let's boil it down to 4 retailers controlling the vast majority of everything that gets sold in the category. So what does that mean? Well, that puts vendors and suppliers at a distinct disadvantage because they are dealing with these massive companies that control so much power in the industry. And that leads to things like, fines and audits and fees that they charge these vendors that the vendors say, look, this is exorbitant. It's incredibly difficult for us to make a profit. So what can we do but raise our prices? And that kind of leads all roads to the consumer where we're paying more at the shelf.
Yeah, a lot of market concentration between a couple of very big players, as you mentioned. And as I said off the top, this has been years in the making. What were some of the challenges that came up through the process of getting this put in place?
Yeah, it was a struggle. I was very close to the Retail Council of Canada as they worked through this process, trying to bring retailers to the table. And it's important to understand this is a voluntary agreement. This is not something that has been legislated. This is not law. This is retailers agreeing to come to the table and trying to hammer out some sort of a code of conduct that will allow them to deal with vendors more fairly. And it's important to mention, too, that this is also about small vendors, small suppliers to the industry, maybe local suppliers who are unable to pay a lot of the very exorbitant placement fees that retailers sometimes demand. Just to be on the shelf, you may have to pay tremendous amounts of money. So this is really aimed at looking at all of these hidden costs and penalties and fees and really trying to bring those under control. But that leads us, as you said right off the top, to the consumer. What does this do ultimately for the consumer? Well, I think feelings on that are mixed. On the one hand, some say this will be completely invisible to the consumer. This is purely between suppliers and the retailers, and the consumer's really not going to feel the impact of this. Others say that, in fact, the consumer may feel the impact of this, but it may not be exactly what they're looking for, because once retailers stop charging some of these exorbitant fees to their suppliers, what are they going to do? What are they going to do to recoup those monies, which sometimes can be millions or tens of millions of dollars, and that may mean that they actually raise prices even further.
You mentioned market concentration, and obviously one factor that could bring prices down is more competition in the market. Will this do anything to, correct that imbalance and see more competition at grocery stores?
Well, that's the hope. That is certainly the hope, that we can, by making the barriers to entry lower for smaller Canadian local brands, maybe we will see some more competition. But my firm belief is that in a nutshell, is the problem. Wherever you have a small number of companies controlling 80% of any market, it makes it very, very difficult for suppliers. It makes it incredibly difficult for young brands to break into the market. And it makes it really difficult for consumers as well, as we have been seeing over the last number of years with prices. So what does that mean? That means that the government really needs to take concerted steps to build more competition, not just in the grocery industry, but let's look at other industries too. Our airline industry is basically controlled by two companies. Our banking industry, our telco industry, the list goes on and on. We are a large country that is controlled by a very small number of oligopolies.
Yeah, latest food price report says in 2026, average family of four will pay up to nearly $1,000 more in groceries. Nanos research found that, rising grocery prices is the top or the second concern for about 80% of Canadian respondents. This code of conduct is voluntary and it's an industry-led initiative. So do you think it'll be effective in bringing down prices? And given that it's voluntary, what happens if it's violated?
Yeah, there are some measures that are built into the code to try and arbitrate disputes. So there is an independent arbitrator that has been established. So if there are disputes between vendors and some of these large grocers, that those can be taken offline and hopefully settled amicably. But the truth is, what you just said is kind of the whole problem in a nutshell, is that this is not legislated. This is not law. This is sort of a gentleman's agreement, if you will, to abide by a set of, voluntary regulations. And traditionally, industries, let's face it, are not good at self-policing. They're not good at self-regulating, and that's where strong government comes in.
Yeah, it's a big topic, grocery prices, and definitely not the last time we'll be talking about it. Doug Stevens, retail expert, thanks for your time and putting this in perspective.
My pleasure, Teddy.
If you find yourself with a little extra time in that blur between the holidays ending and the new year starting, why not fill it with a book? This morning, our favorite bookworm, Vicki Van Sickle, is here in studio with her best of picks for 2025. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning.
I always love it when you're here because I get good ideas.
Excellent. This was a difficult list to pick. There's been a lot of really great books this year.
A lot of great books this year, and I love the ones that you've picked so far. I'm looking forward to diving in, but let's start with the picture books.
Sure.
Presumably for the little ones.
Yes, for the little ones. So the first one one I wanted to start with sort of a seasonal book. This is Brown Girl in the Snow. If that title rings a bell, it's based a little bit on the Afro-Caribbean song Brown Girl in the Ring. And it's based on the author's true story of moving from Guyana to a cold, wintry Canadian city. So it's about a girl who's really missing her garden and sweet potatoes. She's struggling to kind of fit into this cold winter culture. And then she discovers greenhouses, and her school goes on a trip to a greenhouse, and it really helps her bridge the difference between the culture she just came from and the one that she's moving into. So really lovely story. It's got both the kind of snowy aspect, but then this green aspect as well.
It's beautifully illustrated.
Really beautifully illustrated.
Nice.
Call Me Gray is another snowy book. This is about a family tradition where a father and son, every year they wait for the time to build a backyard skating rink. And they love this tradition, it's very cozy. But this year, the boy is feeling a little bit different. And he is feeling that he is actually more of a girl on the inside, even though he's a boy on the outside. So what happens is this very tender, loving conversation about gender identity and choosing a name and feeling comfortable in one's skin. And it's beautifully illustrated, it's very tender. I just loved the story, and I think it'll be special for a lot of families.
I think it's a great age, the kids that are reading this book, for parents to read with kids, to have, especially those issues that might come up, and they can create conversation.
And it's such a tender story, and I really loved that about it.
I love that, yeah.
So switching seasons completely, The Monarch this is actually nonfiction, but it reads like a poem. It's beautifully written, and it looks at the life cycle of the Eastern monarch. So it starts at sort of an egg here in Canada, and then of course there's the migration through to Mexico.
Fun.
Again, the art is really, really beautiful.
Nice.
There's so much, it's very soft and light, a lot of information, but it's also just a delight to read.
Yeah, I love that one. And my son's really into insects, so he would love that one.
Yes, insects lovers will love this one.
And the last one, picture book?
This one here is You Were Meant for This World, or You Were Made for This World. This is a collection of 40 Indigenous thinkers, artists, athletes who've created letters written to Indigenous children. This is all about celebrating identity, celebrating culture, and cultivating joy. It's gorgeous. You can dip in and out of it. I think it's something that is a beautiful gift and something that people will really come to when they're looking for something to celebrate.
I love all of these so far. Let's talk about middle readers. I've got one of those at home.
Middle readers are kind of notoriously difficult.
Yeah.
And I think having a great character can really help pull a kid in. Tig is one of those characters. This won the Governor General's Award this year for children's literature. Heather Smith is a wonderful author. This is about a kid who's had a very difficult childhood. They've been abandoned by their mother, and they go to live with their uncle and his partner. And it's about creating family, second chances, finding community. I know that sounds really heavy, but it's such a resilient book. There's such spirit in this book. There's such love in this book. And I think kids will just love Tig and want to cheer for them.
Okay, and then young adults.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. You've got a Japanese twist on Jane Austen.
That's right. So for YA, I went for something fun and light and sweet. So Amiko is based on Emma, which is possibly the world's most famous matchmaker. And Amiko is actually a Japanese-Canadian teen living on coastal BC. So it's really fun. She's kind of an irrepressible character. And of course, the idea with Emma or Amiko is they're the matchmaker who kind of meets their own match. And that's a really fun and a light book to read at this time of year.
I love that. Okay. For adults, because like I said, I need some recommendations as well. So we've got two. One is a collection of essays, and one is an acclaimed author that we've had on this show a few times. So I'm excited about this.
You've probably had some of the authors from Elbows Up. So Elbows Up is a collection of essays that was a response to this idea of Canada becoming the 51st state. So it's people you will know. There are newscasters, filmmakers, writers, poets, and it's really inspiring. It makes you think about what you love about Canada, and it's sort of a rallying cry. But again, I love a collection of essays because you can read one a night or one a day, make your way through it, and it gives you a lot of time to think about it. But I think, and this, as we're ending the year, really thinking about what it means to be Canadian.
I love that. And it's such an important topic always, but definitely in this past year. Okay, and let's talk about the last one.
Theory of Water is a beautiful story. It begins with an author thinking, what if we could listen to the water? What would it tell us? And then it becomes this beautifully braided book of history and Indigenous responses to water. There's storytelling in it. There's history. There's anecdotes. It's not just her own story, and it really makes you think about the natural world, in particular water, which is very important in Canada. And again, I just loved that you could get all these different stories in this one book, and it really made me think about my own relationship with water.
You are our favorite bookworm for a reason, Vicki Van Sickle. I always love you being here with your recommendations. Thank you so much.
Coming up Monday on Your Morning, expert tips for snowstorm safety.
That's all for us today on Your Morning Weekend. Don't forget, scan the QR codes for Your Morning, the newsletter, And you can listen to more great conversations on Your Morning, the podcast.
We do have another great week coming up. On Monday, we are sharing expert advice when it comes to snowstorms and how to safely navigate those.
On Tuesday, I love this topic, why boredom is so important for kids. And then on Wednesday, we are heading out to the kitchen with Jason Scrobar's cozy winter recipes.
Can't wait. Then on Friday, we're going to bring you a fascinating story about a new group that tracks how reputation-damaging claims emerge and then go viral. So thanks for starting your weekend with us. We'll see you on Monday, Canada.